Before we get started today, I want to make a correction to something I said in my previous video. In that video, I said that this map found with Mario Kart 64's files was a beta Ocarina of Time map. This was the consensus at the time I made the video, but since then it's been determined that it's actually a cut Mario Kart 64 course, which honestly makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Apparently this course had been known about for a while thanks to interviews about the game, so I'm a little surprised this confusion ever arose in the first place. With that out of the way, today we're going to be talking about some of the more interesting SNES prototypes released during GigaLeak Part 1. So this prototype goes by the name Super Donkey, and I'm sure many of you probably saw a video or some screenshots from it, since it was one of the first things to be widely shown off from the leak. You also may very well have totally forgotten about it at this point, as arguably more interesting revelations like the Super Mario World prototype assets were released. These prototypes are honestly worthy of a lot more discussion though. The title Super Donkey obviously implies a connection to the Donkey Kong series, especially the Donkey Kong Country series, which went under the name Super Donkey Kong in Japan. This connection is more or less confirmed by the presence of Donkey Kong sprites found in the game's files. Super Donkey predates the release of the first Country game by around 2 years, so it's not wild to assume that this was Nintendo's first attempt at a Super Donkey Kong game before handing the series over to Rare. Apart from Donkey Kong Country, there's also another game that clearly has its roots in this prototype. The visual style and even some enemies are unmistakably from Yoshi's Island. Even the actual island itself, albeit in an early stage, can be traced back to this prototype. The prototype's world map definitely gives off a more prehistoric jungle feel than Yoshi's Island though. Super Donkey ended up reminding me of a lot of games actually, most of which it predates by a few years. The game it reminds me of the most is the Sega Genesis game Rystar, with its emphasis on grabbing, climbing, pivoting, and swinging on objects. I'd imagine these similarities are purely coincidental with it being a Sega property, but some other mechanics I do think made their way into future Nintendo titles. The ability to switch between foreground and background layers to traverse a stage feels like an idea that was reworked into the Virtual Boy Wario Land game. Many have pointed out that the clouds that appear when you ground pound seem to have made their way into Mario Maker of all places. And then there's the flying, which, despite being in 2D, gives me strong Super Mario 64 vibes. Even with all the similarities, there's still something unique to this prototype. The meter at the top controls how high your character can jump, and filling it all the way allows you to take flight. This allows for a pretty high degree of control, but it's also more than a bit clunky, so I'm not surprised that this mechanic was ultimately abandoned. One fun point of speculation is the identity of the prototype's main character, that, based on appearances anyway, doesn't seem to be Mario. I've heard a few different theories, some even suggesting that the character's design was ultimately incorporated into Captain Olimar's look. My favorite theory though, and I forget who suggested this first so I apologize, but it's the idea that this is Mr. U, the protagonist of the mostly forgotten and nearly lost arcade game Sky Skipper. The biggest supporting evidence for this is simply the fact that your character is dressed as a pilot, like Mr. U. But there is a bit more if you dig slightly deeper. Sky Skipper and the original Donkey Kong arcade game actually share some interesting details. Both games, released in 1981, were designed by Shigeru Miyamoto, share this same musical motif, and perhaps most interestingly, feature apes as the main antagonists. So I don't think it's out of the question that Nintendo would consider resurrecting this character for a Donkey Kong project where the playable character flies around. The other popular guess I see from people is that it's Stanley the Bugman from Donkey Kong 3, citing an apparent visual similarity and the use of a projectile. But I think this is also more evidence that it's Mr. U, as the weapon appears to shoot tiny bombs, your main form of attack in Sky Skipper. Anyway, that's really all just speculation. Something that many people were misled about when the GigaLeak first dropped was the presence of background music in Super Donkey that highly resembled Mario 64's Bob-omb Battlefield. This is due to one of the first widely spread videos of the prototype using a Silva Gunner-esque remix of the song to fill the silence left by the game because, well, there is no music or sound effects of any kind. Game preservationist and YouTube user Luigi Blood did uncover some interesting unused music though, the most notable being a version of Mozart's Einen kleinen Nacht music using the Link to the Past sound font found in the first prototype. That's actually something I really haven't made clear so far. When talking about Super Donkey, we're really referring to two ROMs. The first consisting of only 2 mostly barren levels, and the second being much more involved, spanning 4 levels plus a boss fight. The levels from the first ROM definitely feel more like simple test environments, but it's obvious that both ROMs are from a very early stage of development. It's incredibly easy to soft-like yourself because there's no boundaries on the screen, and if you pause the game, you can even make use of a frame advance feature. I'm also going to go out on a limb here and guess that if this was the Super Donkey Kong we got, you wouldn't be able to just fly over the entire level to the exit. Despite the early state of the prototypes, there's still a lot to appreciate, from the aesthetics to the unique level environments, and even the boss, which was surprisingly fleshed out. It turns into a tiny little bird and flies away when you defeat it. And I think that wraps up everything I wanted to say about Super Donkey. It's definitely worth trying, especially if you have an affinity for either Donkey Kong Country or Yoshi's Island. I really can't overstate just how lucky we are to have this material available for us to play. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping me a like and subscribing to the channel. And before I go, I have to give a big shout out to my Tier 4 patron Famicom Pony. I hope to see you all next time. Take care.